Preparing for the Ielts test, trying to score a band 9 on a Task 1 academic chart, diagram, or other source of information? Take a look at this video where we'll go through a screen share to discuss why we think an essay can score a band 9. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hello everyone. We are taking a look at a Task 1 diagram. We can see here we have a picture of a cycle, this one talking about butterflies, their life cycle, and naturally this is a Task 1 academic prompt for Ielts. So we're going to discuss why this writing could get a score of a band 9 in all of the categories: task achievement, cohesion and coherence, lexical resource, and grammar. We're going to be basing this off of the public rubric that Ielts has available. So again, you can see all those different categories. Let's begin by taking a look at task achievement. So key things for task achievement: we need to make sure we're fully satisfying the prompt and we have a fully developed answer as well. A key thing too is that we do need to have an overview statement. So you can see starting at band 7, we need to have an overview at least, or actually a band 6. Okay, anything without an overview cannot get those higher bands. So let's take a look and see what we have, and explain also what an overview statement is. Okay, so we have our prompt again. Diagram has the life cycle butterfly. We need a 150 word summary, so that's the first thing we need to follow. And you can see that here we have 156 words, so we're meeting our word requirement. This is crucial. I can't emphasize enough that for task 1 you really need 150 words. For task 2 you really need 250 words. It's a very quick way to lose a lot of points if you have less than these requirements. This first sentence here is actually our overview. So the overview, again, the goal is to take all of the information you see in the visual and then summarize a trend that you notice. So for instance here, over the course of 5 unique stages, so we have the stages: butterfly, eggs, caterpillar, pupa, and adult emerging. A butterfly is able to mature from an egg into a fully grown adult. Okay, so you're not just describing the chart in general, you're trying to basically give a summary of things that you notice. So I notice here, for instance, there are 5 separate stages, and from those stages it goes from a butterfly to the adult emerging. Once you have the overview done, you then need to decide your paragraphing. So we can see here I have 2 paragraphs. Most of your task 1s are probably going to have 2 or 3 sections. You can see I have 3 sections here. I have a little, it's not really a paragraph, but I have a section for the overview, and then two paragraphs that are a little bit more complete in terms of numbers of sentences and things like that. This is a pretty standard structure for task 1. Maybe not for every situation, but for many that you'll encounter. Let's make sure that we're hitting everything. So a key thing for task achievement, again, is making sure all of the key features are mentioned. If you miss even one, that can prevent you from getting anything above like even a 6. So you really want to make sure if it's mentioned in the chart, it needs to be mentioned somewhere in your body paragraphs. So let's make sure we're talking about butterfly. So we have the butterfly. After that we have the eggs. Butterflies laying eggs. After that we need the caterpillar. So the eggs hatch into a caterpillar. Great. After that we need to mention the pupa stage, and we have that here. And then lastly we need the adult emerging. Okay. And the butterfly emerges. Okay. And then we mention at the end that this cycle gets repeated. Okay, so all of the key features in this chart are mentioned. A relatively simple diagram in that there's only 5, and it kind of, the development between them is relatively simple, is that butterfly goes to egg, egg goes to caterpillar, etc. But you still need to make sure that you hit all of those things. Other key things for task achievement is that we have a fully developed response. So each of these points really should probably get a sentence at least of its own. And I think that in general the development here looks fine. Okay, so we talk about the first, then we talk about after that and things. This is also somewhat related to your coherence and cohesion. So for coherence and cohesion, we need to use cohesion in a way it attracts no attention. So basically our sentences are flowing into each other and also our paragraphs. And the paragraphing also needs to make sense. It needs to be skillfully managed. Okay. Cohesive devices are also helpful as well. Let's just make sure that the paragraphs are flowing into each other. Okay. So we mentioned stages in our first sentence, and then notice in our next sentence we say the first of these stages. So that's how we're connecting the overview into our first full body paragraphs here. Is we've mentioned, hey, there's a lot of stages, let's look at the first of them, and that kind of is connecting this first paragraph with the overview. Also things like here, some involves a butterfly laying eggs. Notice the next sentence says these eggs. So referencing things that you've mentioned in previous sentences. I said eggs in the first sentence here. I'm then going to use these eggs because, again, your reader is now familiar with what eggs you're talking about. This type of referencing is helpful for connecting your sentences. It doesn't always have to be just about transition words and things like that. Sometimes repeating vocabulary and changing it, so for instance adding in these can be just as, if not more, effective. Let's see, after that we do have some transition words though. So for instance we have however here. Okay. We have once, which is indicating time. Then, indicating afterwards. How about here, undergo the same process? So the same process right here is referring to basically the cycle that we've mentioned in this whole chart. Okay, so again, this is another way, this type of referencing, going back to things that you've mentioned earlier, is key for this coherence and cohesion category as well. It's not just about transition words. Okay. So these are some of the things that I see happening in these body paragraphs that are helping push this task to a higher score. After that, we're going to take a look at Lexical Resource. Lexical Resource basically is talking about vocabulary. What are some of the words that are helping push this to a higher score? Terms that feel advanced. We're looking for collocations, we're looking for idioms, we're looking for advanced terminology. I'm just going to identify some of the words that I think are helping this. I think this phrase over the course of, to show like a duration of time, what's happening over time. To mature, using mature as a verb, I like. Okay. Fully grown, so that compound phrase. To lay eggs is a set phrase. Notice also in our chart we just have the word eggs, so showing that you know that oftentimes a verb that's used with eggs is the verb to lay. So again, this is a collocation. This is an expression you're showing that you are familiar with. Similar to that, other egg terms are also like hatch. Okay, so again, showing some of your vocabulary related to eggs. How about this phrase here? A long, slender shape, a segmented body, and multiple legs. I like this phrase. It's descriptive. A lot of times, the essays I see from students don't include a whole lot of descriptive phrasing. This is a great opportunity to do it, though. Especially, this is a task one where you're not given a whole lot of information. So for some students, it could be difficult to hit the word count. Again, 150 words. That's, for a task like this, it can be a little bit tricky. So adding in a little descriptive phrase like this can be one way to help push up your word count to include more words. And I like the description here. So especially like, for instance, slender, segmented. These are slightly unusual. People that are scoring a 6 or a 7 probably aren't going to be using these terms. For other words, so for instance, a cocoon. Great. On a similar note, we also have chrysalis down here. And again, these are all words that are not included in our original chart. So if you know some terms that for insects, this is a great chance to use it. So for instance, a cocoon, a chrysalis. I know it's a little bit hard to see in this picture, but it's basically that thing that a caterpillar makes before it becomes a butterfly. So again, showing some more of your vocab. Having survived. How about here, developmental milestones? Again, someone that's scoring a 6, a 5, even a 7 probably isn't using like a milestone, let alone a developmental milestone. Morph. And then the next line in reference to future generations. I think that works well too. Okay. Another thing, of course, to consider for vocabulary is to also watch your spelling. You want to take a minute or 2 minutes just to check all your words. Just make sure you're not making any silly spelling mistakes for words you know better. So for instance, if you write the word to, make sure you spell it like T-W-O, not T-O-W. You know, especially those common words, you really need to make sure that you're spelling them accurately. And another thing is that if a word is given in the chart, you need to make sure you're spelling that word correctly too. You will get severely punished if you misspell those words. There's no excuse if the word is given up here. You have it. But in general, I'm not seeing many spelling things or any spelling things here that need attention. Beyond that, let's take a quick look at grammar. So key things for grammar: a wide range of structures, flexible and accurate, rare minor mistakes. Nearly every one of your sentences needs to be correct in the grammar category if you need to get a 9. So this is something you need to consider. No grammar mistakes, really trying to keep them at a minimum naturally. Okay. Let's just kind of see some of the phrases that are helping to push this to a band 9, I think. First thing is that we have lots of phrases. So for instance, over the course of 5 unique stages, notice there's no verb here. It's not a sentence. It's just a phrase to provide some more context. I think we see that in other places as well. How about here in the last paragraph? Having survived all the previous developmental milestones. We do have some like adjective clauses. So for instance, mentioned above, instead of like that were mentioned above. So we have some other phrases and some clauses embedded as well. But these are some quick things that you can do to make your sentences just a little bit more complicated. Adding in a little phrase beforehand to provide additional information or additional context. These are phrases that often are missing from those lower band scores, 5s, 6s, even 7s. A lot of times writers don't include sentences like this, and it can make your writing just sound a little bit more natural. We also have, in addition to that, let's take out the underlining to highlight some things. Mature from something into something else. Okay, so we have a type of comparison going on from one thing into another thing. This is, again, if you're talking about development or something changing, this is one way that you can make it's a structure that you can use that's extremely common. It can help push your writing to make it sound a little bit more natural. So we go from one thing into another thing, or one thing to another thing. And I like that there. Adjective phrases. Okay, so a butterfly, or participial phrases. This is describing a butterfly laying eggs on a plant. So instead of saying a butterfly that lays eggs, so we're using an adjective phrase instead of an adjective clause. That's, again, another option. Help push your descriptions. Starting off a phrase with, for instance, as. Like we see right here. This stage is temporary, however. Why is it temporary? Well, it's temporary as the caterpillar eventually enters. It's giving basically an explanation. Okay. It's like starting a sentence with because Because is extremely common in student writing, so this is just another option, kind of starting off with as in some situations. Okay, I'm not going to say you can always replace because with as, but in this case, I think it works pretty well. A quick thing to know also about this sentence while we're here. This is a long sentence. Notice it's 2 lines, is over 2 lines, and it has a lot of different clauses. You don't want to have too many sentences like this, because it can be a little overbearing for your reader, but I think having 1 or 2 is okay. So this stage is temporary. That's 1 clause. As the caterpillar eventually enters into its life, we have another clause there. Then we have basically a phrase again. It's a straight description, but that description includes another clause, adjective clause describing cocoon. And then here, where it will remain, another clause for description. Okay, so there's a lot of complete clauses here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then also we have this adjective phrase thrown in as well. So there's lots of things that are making this sentence in particular pretty complicated. You don't want to have too many sentences like this, but I think 1 or 2 is okay. The next sentence here has an adverb clause starting off with 1, so we have an adverb clause of time. So once its time is complete, okay, so that's another option that you can use to push your sentences, including more adverb clauses to describe time. Yeah, so I think in general these are the types of things that I see happening in terms of grammar that I think are pushing this to a band 8, a band 9, that I think are working pretty well. I'm not noticing any grammar mistakes or punctuation mistakes that are standing out to me. So based on everything that we've talked about today, I'm pretty confident that this writing could score somewhere around an 8 or a 9. Yeah, overall, I think this is a type of writing that I think could work pretty well for you when you're taking the test. Thank you so much for your time. I'll talk to you guys later.